Friends, we're live. Waste is one among many global challenges we face that has local solutions. It takes hundreds of thousands of people acting in their capacities and capabilities to make true long-term change. Back in 2013, we found that millions of people around the world are looking for solutions, are trying to understand what they can do as government employees, activists, businessmen, and the public to find solutions to and through waste. And the only avenue they had to get such knowledge was international conferences and extremely long PDF reports, both of which are inaccessible to most of these people. So good knowledge was behind paywalls, and half-baked information was easily available online. And that's what led to this platform you're on right now. Friends, welcome to Be Wastewise. My name is Ranjit Annepu, and I'm a co-founder. I'm also an international waste management consultant. We've been providing high-quality expertise in easily accessible formats to thousands worldwide since 2013. And we are now the largest platform for live events and video knowledge in circular economy and waste management sectors, thanks to contributors like Zoë Lenkiewicz and Mike Webster. So today, WasteAid UK, we're organizing this program in conjunction, in partnership with WasteAid UK, where we're providing their knowledge to you in easily accessible formats. And we have Zoë Lenkiewicz with us, and Mike Webster is getting delayed, so we'll wait for him while Zoë talks to you about WasteAid UK, what they're doing, and about the presentation itself. So Zoë, welcome to Be Wastewise again. How are you doing today?
Thanks very much, Ranjit. Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. Doing better than Mike, I think. He's nearly here. He's on the motorway somewhere, but he'll be joining us as quick as he can. So yeah, thanks very much again for inviting WasteAid into this partnership with Be Wastewise. Like you were saying, yeah, the lack of information available for people online about waste management has been a real challenge, and I think continues to be, but through programs like the Be Wastewise platform for sharing and disseminating information, and through the various initiatives that WasteAid is doing and other parties as well, I think that it's changing pretty quickly, and there's now plenty of, well, not plenty of information, but lots more than there was, certainly, of accessible information online for people wherever they are to be able to learn about how to manage their waste, how to recycle materials into new products, and how to make small businesses from that. So yeah, we're really looking forward to today's webinar and sharing what we've learned about how to set up and grow small recycling businesses from our work with WasteAid. So thanks, Ranjit. Cheers for having us.
Great. Friends, just to be sure, we will have a presentation with Mike and Zoë, but since Mike is getting delayed, we'll start it as soon as he's here. Until then, Zoë and I will talk about what WasteAid has been doing recently, and also about the problems that we see in developing countries that need to be addressed, and that can be addressed through this webinar. Zoë, talking about talking about WasteAid and the different programs that you're doing. I mean, I think WasteAid UK is one of the most exciting nonprofits that are out there, doing WasteAid walks, and and all of that is you're doing all of that, you're achieving all of that with a very small team. And I think that's also very entrepreneurial when it comes to your funding and then the growth of the team. So could you talk to us a little bit about that? I mean, I'm sure. So let me give you some context on why I'm asking that. So I was working on a project with World Bank recently, and they asked us to provide training for micro and small enterprises in waste management sector in Ethiopia. And we created a curriculum, and but throughout creating the curriculum, we kept asking ourselves, is this what the micro and small enterprises require? And so to understand whether it was, we went on a trip there. We went onto the field. We went to the field there, and after our stakeholder interviews, we found that what they wanted to know was completely different: accounting, business management, or bookkeeping. So it wasn't as much solid waste management, but it was a whole lot of business management that they wanted to learn. So coming to that point, so could you talk about that a little bit, about how you're doing that with a small team?
Sure. Yeah, okay. So in terms of the growth and development of WasteAid itself, yeah, we're still a very small organisation. We are run by 2 part-time people, myself and Mike Webster, who's nearly here, and with some help from a a small handful of volunteers as well. So the way that we've also got our board of trustees, which as a registered charity we have to have. So the way that we operate financially is we have to apply for funding to fund projects that we want to deliver with our partners overseas. And then when we get that funding, we then have to, that money is then ring fenced. So we can't use that money to support actually the growth and development of WasteAid. So we're at a very interesting time now. I think the first few years, we're in year 4 now. And I think for the first few years, things moved kind of slowly because I think waste management was not on it was not on the funders' priority lists, you know. So we would try to explain that project. Oh, it's also a climate change project. It's not just waste management, you know. It's also very good for climate change impacts and so on. But we weren't very successful. But you know, moderately successful. But I think that now that this awareness has really shifted, suddenly waste management is on funders' priority list, and that's a wonderful thing to see. So yeah, we're able now to make a lot more progress, and we're being much more successful with our project proposals, I would say. But what we really need now is the core funding for the charity, so that we can, like, unrestricted funding we need, so that we can, you know, hire staff. A bookkeeper is one of the first things that we would like to get, because we're having to do everything ourselves, you know, and it would be ideal to have somebody that just does that with that specific skill to support us, to free us up then to spend more time on, you know, on what we're sort of, what our main skills and talents are. So yes, I completely sympathise with the people that you were working with in Addis Ababa? You were?
It was in Ethiopia, smaller cities in Ethiopia.
Okay, yeah, sure. But yeah, so yeah, starting up any kind of business or enterprise or program, it does take a lot of different skills, and for that reason, I think it's always good to work in a team, because it's rare that any one person is going to have all the skills that you need.
Right.
And then, sorry, go on.
No, so we had a similar experience with Be Waste Wise. I mean, when we started, we were just 2 people. And one of the things that was really interesting is that when you start a business or any enterprise, I mean, you have a lot of enthusiasm, but very little money. So it was interesting. We had to find our first funders. You know, we had to first find funders and then start our program, and then we had to keep on finding funding all the time. And it was really interesting for me to see how you organized walks and then all kinds of merchandise, which not many international waste management organizations do. So I thought that was really interesting on how you raise that kind of funding for you. And with respect to your other point on how you should find people, the initial team to be of different skills, I was an engineer and a consultant when we started. You know, I had the subject matter expertise, and then my co-founder, Katrina Mitchell, she was the branding and communications person. That's something, skill that I didn't have, and we really needed that. So that kind of worked very.
Yeah.
Is that the case with you too?
Well, I suppose I was more branding and communications. Mike had done some, I don't know, I think, yeah, I would maybe, yeah, I take more responsibility for the branding and communications for sure, but we've both had to learn so many additional skills, you know, during our time of growing WasteAid. Fundraising, as you mentioned, is one of them. Like, I'd never really done fundraising before. Sure, I'd done some collections for charities and been involved in sponsored events that other people were organising. But no, to be organising like big fundraising events like the Walk for WasteAid is definitely a new challenge. There's a whole new skill set. I used to think that my job was pretty varied, but these days it's incredible what we have to do from, like, you know, through a day, the variety of tasks and things. But we've been so going back to your point as well about how we're using these fundraising activities and so on to help grow our charity. Yeah, I think we decided to model ourselves on some of the larger NGOs. I mean, obviously, we're not anywhere near that scale yet. We're still tiny, but we see how they, you know, raise awareness through activities that people can enjoy getting involved with, and then raising money as well. So, and we're learning all the time. So the first 2 sponsored walks that we did to raise money for WasteAid, we climbed mountains. So we climbed the highest mountain in Wales and at Snowdon, and then we climbed the highest mountain in England at Scafell Pike last summer. But we wanted this year to do something that more people would see us while we were actually doing the walk. So we decided to go to London, and we did what's commonly known as the London Bridges Trek. So it was 25 kilometres across the 16 bridges of London. And we managed to attract more than 100 people came and joined us, which was fantastic. We all had the sponsored T-shirts, so we made a big kind of you know, imprint on what people saw that day in London. You know, when there's 100 people walking towards you with the WasteAid logo on their T-shirts, that's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had a great day and raised over £10,000 of unrestricted funding then for the charity. So yeah, that's been really, really positive. So we're learning a lot all the time about what kind of things people want to get involved with. You know, obviously we make mistakes along the way, but that's how you learn and improve. So yeah, we're confident about, you know, growing for the future. And yeah, excited to be working with partners like Be Wastewise to bring more people to one another's platforms. Yeah.
Right. One of the things that I wanted to mention to people who are wanting to, who would like to start businesses or who have already started businesses is, you can see from Zoe's experience how creativity is like really important, you know, but many people talk about it. So from there, I'm going to talk about some of the other issues that are that people don't generally focus when they're starting their companies. One is to have a good set of advisors. We thought that was really helpful for us. Good set of advisors or mentors with a varied skill set, and keep in touch with them with maybe quarterly calls or quarterly meetings so that you're updating them and then kind of getting the guidance that you need or the connections that you need. So I thought that was really helpful for us. And the second thing that I felt that was really helpful was I had a chance to advise a young person starting a company recently. And then the first thing that I said is find the market. This is something that is generally not talked about when you start a business, but then finding the market and then finding the customer, that kind of really helps you, you know, go ahead with your business, you know, get it funded, get the cash flow going, and then to move ahead and, you know, expand your business. So find the market and then find the funder and then organize your business accordingly to meet that market or the client. So do you have any such tips?
Yeah, I think that's all really good advice. I think one of the important things when you're sort of selling your business idea to a potential funder, you need to be able to demonstrate what problem you're solving. That's a really key one. It's like what you were saying, find your market. You know, like people, it's all well and good having an idea, but if you're not actually solving a problem that people are experiencing, then it's going to be a really hard sell. You solve a problem for them and your customers will come. So I think, yeah, that's good advice. And also, yes, your advice of just being part of a team. My favorite hashtag is teamwork makes the dream work, because it really does. You can't, you know, none of us can do it by ourselves. So I think that's really, really important. Yeah. One final point that I'd like to make about if you're setting up a business in waste, and then we'll start the presentation because Mike is getting pretty late now. So sorry, everybody, and thanks for your patience. But one thing that I've observed through my own personal experience and the experience of people around the world that we're in touch with now through WasteAid is the perception, the negative perception that other people can have about waste and people who choose to work with waste. Yeah, so like from my personal experience, when I started working in waste like 17 years ago, whatever it is now, and people would say, oh, so what do you do for a living? And I say, oh, I work in waste management. And they're sort of like, ooh, like, why on earth would you choose to do that? And then after some years, I realized that if I said, oh, I work in recycling, then I got a more positive response. And it actually is the same thing, of course. But it did elicit a more positive response. And again, now the perception has just changed again recently because of, well, in the UK at least, David Attenborough, our kind of national treasure wildlife presenter, recently, ran a program and talked about plastic pollution in the marine environment. And that suddenly improved people's perceptions yet again of those of us who are working in this area. Now that process has happened over the 17, 18 years that I've been in this area in the UK. Talking to people, in other countries, for example, in Malawi, I've been talking to Chiku, who we've got a lovely case study on our website at the moment, so do check it out. And he's found the same, that it doesn't matter what level of education you have or what ideas you've got about how much you can improve the community and the environment and all the benefits of working with waste. People might still perceive that you are kind of, beneath them because you would even consider working with waste. Okay. So one thing that one program that we're working on now is to start changing people's perceptions. Change the global perception of waste, like just a small job, but we're trying to make a start on it. And one idea that we had, going back to the need to be creative with these things, Mike's just arrived, is our photo competition called The Wonders of Waste. So we're inviting photographs from all over the world, wherever you are. Hello, here he is. I think you're going to need to get your laptop out, please, so that we can get the. Thanks. Yes, so photographs of either people working with waste and recycling, or of you've been quite noisy, sorry. Or perhaps a nice recycled product or beautiful materials that have been sorted and prepared for recycling, something like this, so that we can start to lift people's perceptions of waste and of those who work with it.
Right. So, hey, Mike, nice to see you again.
Hi, apologies. I do apologize about my lateness. Bad traffic. I'm sorry.
No problem. Get a nice deep breath. And then, Zoe, since you already have the presentation on, maybe we could start on this laptop. And then for this event, we'll just go with it that way. Okay? Yeah?
Yeah, perfect.
All right, great. So, friends, the presentation will be starting soon. Let's see what Zoe's got on the screen. Zoe, so click on the left side screen share, and then you'll have it on there.
Yeah. Okay, and now if I go here.
There.
Okay.
Yep.
Brilliant. Okay, so you're happy for us to just carry on talking through the slides, and then Mike will be able to join us through Google Hangouts.
Sure, yeah. Sure, he can do that. And just remember that we only have another 25 minutes because we started 5 minutes late. So, and yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So, yeah, Mike, are you happy to?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I do apologise for my lateness. For those of you that know the M25, you all know what a problem that motorway can cause. It's great to see you all, and thank you very much for listening. So today we're going to be talking about how to grow your waste recycling business. This fits very much in with WasteAid's do-it-yourself ethos. And making money and recovering your costs isn't a dirty word when you're trying to clean the planet. So, Zoe, do you want to introduce yourself?
No, I'm Zoë Lenkiewicz. I'm Head of Communications at WasteAid, and this is Mike Webster.
Hi, I'm Chief Exec at WasteAid, and Zoe and I are both very experienced waste managers, been working all around the world. It's great to meet you all online. So, WasteAid's mission is, as it says, to transform lives by sharing recycling skills with the world's poorest communities. As I'm sure many of you know, 2 billion people live without having something as simple as their garbage collected. That means they'll have to dump, burn, bury themselves. And whilst that is a public health nightmare, with direct impacts on, for instance, the level of waterborne disease, the level of air pollution, as well as obviously we're seeing more about the impact on marine pollution, it's also a missed opportunity. And what we want to talk today about is how those opportunities can be realised. Our ongoing project, well, we're going to talk about a little bit more about our toolkit in a second. We've got a couple of major projects that we'll be soon announcing. We are doing a variety of studies at the moment, and we've been in touch with some of you recently. But our approach is one that empowers communities to deal with their own waste. Our message is don't wait for someone else, don't wait for the government to come and sort your waste out. You can do it. So just to cover what we're going to talk about today, for a start, please use the live chat box to comment or ask questions. We've just been, we'll be looking at who WasteAid is and the webinar program, so you can just have a little bit more of information about the things that we've already talked about and the things that we are going to talk about. And then we're going to be looking at the webinar program, and then we're going to be looking at the waste management business. So why waste? It's big business. Zoe will be talking about the scale of the issue, why it's so important, and then we'll be looking at the fundamentals of how to start a business. What people think of as waste isn't waste. It's a resource. It's your raw material. We'll be thinking about that. Something's not truly recycled until it's been turned into something that people want, something that people want to buy. So actually, we're going to be thinking about how do we assess demand? How can we work out what it is that people actually want to give you money for? We'll be then thinking about the basics of writing a business plan, and finally, how to get help and support. We'll be then thinking about how to grow your business sustainably. A few strategies about how to grow, how to replicate what you're doing, and how to be thinking about doing a few new things. So I would urge you to take a look at our toolkit. If you haven't already, the address is simple. It's wasteaid.org.uk/toolkit. It's essentially talked about, it's a totally free resource. It is in PDF format, which is something we've done on purpose. So it's easy to do, easy to download. It won't use up too much data. You can store it on your phone or your laptop for later use. And it is designed, first of all, so people know, why does this matter? Sometimes it's important to remember that actually we've got to sell this idea into our community. So we need to think about, why does it matter? Secondly, it's about those steps before you actually start making that all-important first sale. It's about, how do I understand the sorts of ways, the sorts of markets, those sorts of things.
Sorry.
And finally, we'll be looking at some of the technologies itself. So that is all there on the toolkit, and it's available for download. So please go and have a look. We've already had more than 20,000 people downloading it in 173 countries. It's very popular, so join the movement and download that. Just to outline when these webinars are, we had our first one, which is available on the Be Wastewise website and on the WasteAid website. That was on the 11th of April, and that is why this stuff matters in the first place. It's the first steps. Today, obviously, we're looking at growing our waste recycling business. That's cleaning the planet and creating jobs. And then we've got, on the 19th of September, setting up and growing your organic waste management initiative. So we'll be looking at organic waste. There's a lot of it around the world. It has a low value, so people often struggle to work out what you can actually do with it. And that's on the 19th of September. And then on the 20th of November, we'll be looking at the material that everyone's talking about at the moment, plastics, and how you can manage that in your community and how to reduce its environmental impact. So I'm going to hand over to Zoe's very capable of hands, and she's going to be talking about the waste industry.
Thanks, Mike. So sorry, we've got a problem with having the camera and the slides on at the same time because of the microphones, and we managed to sort it last time, but I can't remember how to do it. So I think we'll just carry on, get through the slides. So yes, today we're going to be talking about the waste management business and the scale of it. So one thing that I wanted to do, just to get some perspective, was to talk about the scale of the waste management sector in the UK. So you can see at the bottom this horse and cart. This is how waste was commonly collected 100 years ago, or even less, in the UK. But today, this is recent government figures. There are 3,000 companies employing 70,000 people with an annual turnover of over £9 billion. So when people say, oh, you know, waste is just it's a dirty thing, it's of no value, well, I beg to differ, because if it's managed properly, then it can employ a lot. You can employ a lot of people. Now, obviously, one big difference in the UK compared to countries that lack formal waste management systems is the policy. So the environmental policies, the public health policies that basically demanded waste management services be introduced, and that then insisted that municipal councils deliver those services. They're a key element that we have here that doesn't exist in a lot of other parts of the world. However, that said, there is still ample business opportunity to work with waste, with or without that policy. One thing that Professor David Wilson, our patron and the chief author of the Global Waste Management Outlook, he found that, through multiple studies, that even very, very poor people, if they can see that a service that you're providing is actually improving their quality of life, they're still willing to pay a tiny amount towards that. So, there's always a chance for cost recovery. And another important lesson that we like to share is that if to set up a successful waste management business, you want to be paid to collect the waste from people, and then you also want to get money when you sell that waste on. So you're doing the middleman reprocessing stuff, or just sorting, or whatever it is, but you've got two chances there to earn some money, and that's how you can make it really profitable. So yeah, the waste industry in the UK, coming back to this slide now, it's important for material security, energy, climate change, environmental protection, and public health and sanitation. And those are the same wherever you are in the world. This is a typical recycling truck that we have in the UK now, with everything separated into the various materials, so that the maximum value can be recovered when these materials are sold onto the market. So one lesson that we mentioned in the last webinar was that it's always better to separate your materials at source, because once they're mixed together, particularly flexible plastics and food waste, once they're mixed together, it's just a mess, and it's really difficult for anybody to see how there could be value in it. But if you're collecting the materials separately, then they're nice and clean, and you'll be able to get a better price for them when you sell them on, or if you're making a new product from them. So the waste management industry in Europe has grown a lot since I started working in it. In the first 10 years of this millennium, the number of people working in waste in Europe doubled to 2 million people. This was largely, again, because of the driver of policy. The landfill directive came in, which meant that councils had to start separately collecting food waste for composting. Food waste and paper, anything that will rot, ought to be diverted from landfill sites or dumps now. Around the world, there's a staggering 15 to 20 million people working in waste management, in the informal waste sector. So these are people who are entrepreneurs. They may be picking for waste on a dump site, or they might be providing a small-scale service to their neighbours and community. But either way, there's so much potential going forward. I think this is a very, very exciting area to work in. And I think that if you choose to work in waste, you'll never have a boring day. You'll be learning something all the time. And that's a great opportunity. So there's lots and lots of different kinds of jobs in waste management. So don't feel that it's all waste handling, because it isn't necessarily. There's lots of different kinds of jobs that you could either get or develop in your own community. So keep that in mind, and stay creative, because we've only got time to talk about a few different kinds of waste businesses here, but there's so much potential that it's an exciting area to work on this. So just very briefly, one thing that we have found, and I touched on this with Ranjit earlier, just before Mike arrived, was people's perceptions of waste and of those who work with waste. And this is something that we're really keen to improve globally. So what we've decided to do is to launch a photography competition. So we're inviting photos from anyone, wherever you are in the world. And we want them to be inspiring, positive photos of either people working with waste, or perhaps a recycling process, or perhaps a product made from recycled waste materials, or maybe, I don't know, some nice colourful materials waiting. They've all been sorted and baled, and they're sort of in the sunlight waiting to be taken off and transformed into something new. So please do send us your photo entries. The address is at the bottom, wasteaid.org.uk/photo 2018. And the 12 winners are going to go into our charity calendar, which we're going to try for the first time. So please do take part and help us improve the perception of waste around the world. Okay. So I'm going to just introduce the next section here. What does it take to start up a waste management business? Now, many of you will have already seen the WasteAid Toolkit that we published last October. That's been accessed by people in over 180 countries now. And this sort of, the toolkit breaks this down into a lot more detail than we can touch on here. So please do have a look at that. It's in volume 1, Making Waste Work. So we're going to look at what it takes. Supply and demand, for starters. Again, what I was talking about with Ranjit in terms of, what problem are you solving? Because if you're not solving a problem for people, then you're unlikely to be able to get customers. So you need to be solving a problem locally, whether that problem is pollution or a lack of, I don't know, for example, a lack of construction materials. Well, you could put 2 and 2 together. You can start collecting the plastic waste and turn it into construction materials. And so you're really meeting a demand and solving a problem there. So the other 2 parts are developing your business plan, making sure that you're costing things correctly, and getting help and support. So working together as a team and making sure you've got all the skills that you need around you. So let's start with the supply of materials. You need to know what materials you've got. So we always start by doing what we call a waste composition analysis, which is basically going to the dump site, often separating off a ton or 2 of waste and sorting through it with a fine tooth comb to really understand what materials are there. We might split the waste into, I don't know, 20 different materials. And then even when we've just got the tiny little bits, which these women are working with in the photograph, we even sort that out. So we know, oh, we've got this much flexible plastic, this much rigid plastic, this is stones or, you know, paper or whatever. Once you know how much of each material you've got, then you know what you can work with. And of course, you know, from a waste management perspective, it's always good to work with problematic materials, of which there are plenty. So plastic packaging waste would be a good case in point. Knowing how to get clean materials. This is going back to the photo that I showed you of the truck with the separate compartments for the recycling, you know, materials for recycling. It's always better to work with clean materials if you can. So we'll go to the dump site, we'll see what's there, but then we'll try and trace it back to who's producing this waste. And can we go and speak to them and ask them to keep it to one side so that we can collect it while it's still clean and before it's mixed up with all the other kind of junk and taken to the dump site. So it's always better and safer to work with clean materials. There's advice in the toolkit on how to perform a simple waste analysis. So I won't bore you with those details now, but it's pretty straightforward and common sense. So then moving on to the demand side. So you've collected your materials, you're reprocessing stuff into or you want to reprocess the materials into a product that you can sell on the market. How are you going to do that? Are you selling a product that people are unfamiliar with? Are you going to need to explain to them why it's better than what's currently on the market? For example, these photos came from a company called Comfort in Malawi, from our friend Chiku, and you can read his case study on the WasteAid website at the moment, so please do have a look. So Chiku has been collecting organic waste and converting it into compost. Well, what are most people using to fertilize their land at the moment? They're using chemical fertilizer. So it's important to be able to explain to people why using this organic fertilizer is better. Is it going to save them money? Is it going to help their plants grow better? Are we providing local jobs and so on? So you need to get out there, do some market research, talk to people and listen to what their questions are and what their concerns might be. And that will help you establish, whether or not they will buy your product, maybe with time, and also how to price your product so that you are making sure that you're competitive on the market. So speaking of which, I'm going to pass you over to Mike, who's going to talk you through how to cost your product.
So understanding the price of your product is pretty key. If you sell something for less than the cost of production, you'll be going out of business pretty quickly. If you price something too high, no one will buy your product and you will again be going out of business pretty quickly. So let's just break it down. It's a pretty simple equation fundamentally. First of all, there's the production costs. Do you have to buy the materials? Do you have to pay someone to collect them? We're talking about waste products, but there may be a value. We all know about the thriving markets in, for instance, scrap metal around the world. People will often come door to door and buy materials from householders. That's a waste material, but it has a value. So do you have to pay to buy the materials, or do you have to pay someone to collect it? Or do you have to pay, for instance, fuel to bring it from the source, the place where it was dumped or collected, to where your reprocessing centre is? So those are your production costs. You've also got to think about the equipment you need. So that's capital equipment. Now, WasteAid's approach is to take very low capital equipment, aiming at things like molds and drums and containers that are easily available and cheap. However, over time, you may want to scale up. You may want to do more work, and so you may want to be investing more. But that's something that you'll come to in the future. Next one is operating costs. If you're either paying yourself, and never forget to pay yourself, your time isn't free, so you need to be costing that and making sure that's in there. Or you're paying other people. You may be having to rent a site. Things wear out. If you're using hammers and containers and wheelbarrows, they'll break eventually. So you might have to pay to fix those. So these are your operating costs. These are the costs that you have from day to day. Finally, you need to have a profit margin. Now, profit isn't only a little bit of extra money for you, it's the money that's left over after you've covered all your costs. And you also need that money to be able to invest in the future. Do you need to be able to buy new equipment? Do you want to expand? Do you want to hire more people? And that is what that profit is for. It's also there as how do we call it? Yeah, absolutely, insurance. And it's a cushion just in case you have problems or challenges in the future. So that production cost, the operating cost and the profit all together give you your price. So that's what you're going to charge your customers per unit, whether it's a bag of briquettes, a bag of compost, what have you. However, that price can't be anything. So let's think about the sorts of things when you're in the market or you're in the shop. First of all, everyone wants a good deal. You've got to make sure your price is very competitive, close to the other price. Certainly when you're starting out, you probably want to actually look at having something that's better value, lower cost, cheaper than the existing product. Why? Because you're trying to attract people. This is another point while we're here. You're probably going to have to be thinking about giving away free samples right at the beginning when you're starting. So make sure you've costed that in. But it's got to be competitive. And if you're asking people to pay more, which you might eventually be able to do, well, you might be able to get there, but you'll have to do a lot of convincing. Okay. So pricing your product and keeping the price low enough is those two key points. So you're not just selling a product, you're selling a change. Okay, you're going to have to persuade people that throwing their waste anyhow, burning it in their backyard, dumping it in open ground is not an option. So have a look at that first section in our toolkit. It talks about why waste matters, and different people are interested in different things. If you're talking to a farmer, it may be cheap fertilizer. If you're talking to a construction worker, it might be cheap building materials. Lots of different people are interested in different things. Make it easy for people to use your service, whether it's segregating materials. Let people know why you've got to do it. Encourage people, tell them they're doing well, rather than going in there and telling them they're not using a service and that's disgusting and disgraceful. Actually say, look, it's really easy to collect your waste all together in this simple way. Get people involved, talk to the local community, get people, whether it's local government advocates, perhaps local faith leaders on your side, and tailor your approach for different groups. And show people that you can do it. Leading by example is extremely powerful. Showing if you have a demonstration site that, for instance, shows crops grown with your fertilizers, that shows, for instance, a demonstration yard that's been built with your building materials, show people that this stuff works. Okay, so we need to talk about waste, work with the government. The government always has an interest in this, and it's important to make sure they are on side. So we thought about who WasteAid is. We looked at the scale and the growth of the waste management business, a truly global mega business, and something you can be part of if you want to. And we've looked at the fundamentals of how to start a business, making sure we've got those materials. They're your raw material after all, making sure people want to buy something. It's not truly recycled until it's been bought by someone. We thought about the basics of pricing, and then we thought about who we need to work with. The next thing is how to grow your business. So there are basically a few simple options. Find people to work with that they can start delivering some of the perhaps simpler elements of your work. Okay, building relationships and trust with your staff is key. And let's not forget, often people are embarrassed or ashamed to be working with waste, or at least in the beginning. So certainly I've been talking to people, waste collection companies, sometimes they have to pay their staff more or give their staff better benefits to hold on to them, because a good driver, a good loader is worth their weight in gold. Also diversify. So if you are working with one material, what else can you work with? Can you add new materials? If you're working with organic materials, can you start working with compost, or vice versa? If you're working with making, for instance, charcoal briquettes, can you start moving into compost? Can you start moving into animal feed? Alternatively, you could start working in new areas. Repeat what you're doing, but do it again, perhaps in another part of town or perhaps in a new town. How are you going to do this? Are you going to be the boss and you're going to have a branch manager and staff there? Or are you going to help independent people set up new franchises? Finally, there's a lot of interest in waste. Waste is growing. There's going to be more of it and it's not going away. Can you advise or train others looking to start their own business, showing your own successes? How can they repeat what you're doing? There's lots of opportunities. Always think about perhaps taking an approach that covers several of these. It's good to have lots of different approaches. Don't put your eggs all in one basket.
Okay, so it's been a bit of a whirlwind through these slides, and sorry again, it's been a bit of a rushed webinar, but hope you found it quite useful. Mike's just been discussing, how to grow your business, employing more people, diversifying into new areas, new materials, new products, or new towns and cities. So that is the end of this webinar. The next one will be on the 19th of September, setting up and growing your organic waste management initiative. So please do look out for that one. Here's the toolkit that we're speaking from now, wasteaid.org.uk/toolkit. And there we are. That's all our social media handles. So please do look us up, join in the conversation, and get involved. And one final thing for the photography competition. So help us change people's perceptions of those who work in waste, because we are the the healthcare workers, the environmental protectors, the employers, the entrepreneurs. We are many things, and there are many of us. So it's time that people actually understood that it's not a negative thing to work with waste. It is a very positive thing. So let's share that inspiration and motivation with our brothers and sisters around the world. So that's that. I'm going to pop back to Ranjit very quickly. And take screen share off, I think. Do I?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm here.
Okay.
Hey friends.
There we are. Hi.
Hey, so friends, so sorry about the difficulties we encountered today. Please join WasteAid UK for the next 2 webinars. We'll start on time and make sure your experience is smooth without any difficulties. We have numerous recorded webinars on the wastewise.be website. Please take a look at them to learn from some of the best minds in waste, all presented to you in good and smooth video formats. So this webinar is also being recorded, and we'll send you a replay link. The presentation will be made available to you as part of a summary article with the replay of this webinar. And we'll also provide you a link to the WasteAid toolkit, but even otherwise, you should be able to find the toolkit very easily on Google or by going to WasteAid UK's website. And with that, thank you very much for joining us, and see you again next time. Again, don't let today's experience stop you from joining us in the future. WasteAid UK has 2 more webinars coming up in September and November. So thank you again. Have a good day, good evening, and good afternoon wherever you are.